Well, good evening. Thank you so much for coming out on this cold, windy, rainy Las Vegas night, which is so atypical for us, right? Yes. So I want to welcome you to the Neon Museum for our Prism Time of the Signs lecture presented by CenturyLink, Fabricating the Fantasy, Las Vegas Interiors, and the artists who bring them to life. I want to just do a little bit of housekeeping. Bathrooms are over there where the blue lights are. Be careful walking around because it is dark. We do have lines taped down. But thank you once again for coming out. I'm Dawn Merritt. I'm the Public Relations and Marketing Director here at the Neon Museum, and I would like to introduce Scott Dickensheets. He is our moderator tonight. Scott is the deputy editor of Desert Companion magazine. He previously served as editor-in-chief of both Las Vegas City Life and Las Vegas Weekly, as managing editor of Las Vegas Life magazine, and assistant city editor, assistant features editor, and columnist at the Las Vegas Sun. Please welcome Scott and the panel.
Hello. Hi. Thank you so much for showing up. I'm not put off by the weather. I've got decades of living here, the sun baking my bones. I'm radiating desert heat all the time. So, so thanks for coming out to talk about Fabricating the Fantasy. We'll be discussing the ins and outs of casino interiors and interior design and so on. It's hard to think of a topic that's probably more important to the development of Las Vegas, going back to the time, even in the earliest eras when Vegas had to sort of make its name and stand out as a destination and sort of carve its own place in the world. On up to today, where every place now has a casino, so Vegas has to sort of stay ahead of the game, and it takes a lot of skilled artisans and people to make that happen. And fortunately, we have a panel tonight of people who can address this, people who will sort of peel back the process, open the curtains of the process, show you how it's done and how the magic is made. So let me introduce them. To my left here is Mark Oatis. He's a creative director at YESCO. He has over 40 years of experience in the sign industry and is a founding member of the Letterheads, a trade organization dedicated to education and the furtherance of traditional sign methods, principles, and techniques. Next to him, Robert Beckmann. He's a professional artist whose work has been exhibited in museums and galleries throughout the United States and internationally. In 2005, he was commissioned by the architect of the Capitol to design and create 6 murals for the U.S. Botanic Gardens in Washington, D.C. He has created over 230 murals throughout the Las Vegas Valley, many of which are in casinos, but also at Nellis Air Force Base and the lobbies of the Las Vegas Boy Scout Council and the Howard Hughes Executive Tower. Next to him, Evgeni Vodenitcharov. I think I was in the zip code. He's a fine art sculptor and the founder of Icon Sculpting. He's created hundreds of sculptures for the Las Vegas Strip, and also for museums, churches, and parks. His commissions for the Las Vegas Strip include resorts such as Caesar's Palace, Treasure Island, the Venetian, and SLS. And on the end is Brian Henry. He's a Las Vegas native and a member of the first graduating class from the Visual Arts program at the Las Vegas Academy. He's been a commercial artist since age 17. He's worked in a variety of design and engineering capacities, including 15 years as Senior Design Associate at YESCO, where he specialized in technologically advanced lighting displays. His work can be seen along the Strip, throughout the United States, and as far away as Hong Kong Harbor. He's now the principal of Brian Henry Design, a multidisciplinary design firm through which he continues to develop cutting-edge signage and motion graphics content and lighting control systems. So these are the folks who are going to show you how the fantasy is fabricated. We'll start with Mark, who's going to first give an overview of some of the history and then move into some of his work.
Okay, so this is, there we go. Although Las Vegas was actually more of a railroad town, the version of the city as a down-to-earth vestige of the Old West, complete with its friendly saloons, has always been pervasive. The Western legend found traction in the casino business. Notable properties include the Frontier, the Westward Ho, the Pioneer Club, Golden Nugget, the Four Queens, and the Golden Gates. And as always, this is Main Street Station, one of my favorite interiors. The theming that was established on the facade, on the exterior facades, was always mimicked on the inside of the casinos in more or less complete incarnations. Circus Circus, of course, is an all-inclusive fantasy. Circus Circus is a standout, complete with over-the-top, big-top architecture. That's kind of scary, actually. I think it was a charity benefit, but I mean, even to this day, they've got performers, they've got costumery, carpets. It's really all-inclusive. And then, okay, now we're on to the desert themes. A version of a tropical oasis, sometimes with an exotic Middle Eastern flair, inform the style and aesthetic of many famous properties. These include Sahara Desert Inn, Dunes, Sands, Flamingo, Tropicana, the Aladdin. This is a YESCO sign. It's one of my favorites out of the YESCO archives. And in fact, we have a great picture in the YESCO archives of Liberace changing the lights from the little dangling part from the YESCO bucket part. And then, of course, ultimately themed interiors, including the Desert Passage at Aladdin, evolved with complete retail environments, dining venues, etc. Of course, fantasy and fanciful and mythical environments are always welcome, and they're always reinforced on the inside with heroic tales. This is the interior at the Venetian, and of course, actually these got out of order. So this is the interior at the Venetian. Cities that include recognizable icons have been shown in Las Vegas to great effect. This will look familiar. I think we're Mystical, so we're right on into the part. This is the case history of some of my work. In 1999, I was hired to do a specialty signage and themed program at Paris, Las Vegas. Our scope included, this is the company that I had before I came to work for Las Vegas called Studio Arts and Letters. We provided all of the directional signage, venue signage, wayfinding and plaque signage, everything that was non-illuminated for the whole property. And then in addition, we got a contract to create themed decor items. So our deadline was so short. By the time we got brought in, there was about 5 weeks to opening. So we actually were moved into a studio in the basement. We had 10 artists. We worked virtually around the clock creating pieces like this. All of the specialty interior items for the buffet, all under the heading of decor signage. Since my specialty is in signage, I've always found that in these streetscape environments, it's really important that signs and graphics are authentic to the setting, and it really makes a difference when they're done well. This is gold leaf on glass. My wife Rose was in the audience, helped on this. The conceit here was that this might have been Gustave Eiffel's personal office. Just all kinds of carved plaques. We did a lot of faux finishing. That's a beautiful pictorial piece that we created across from the tower. The message reads, "I can see to the top," and we made it look like a poster that might have been for the World's Exposition in 1888. More carved signage that was created at the facility down in the basement. And one thing about this is, in those opening days, the staff was comprised of a lot of French people, particularly people who were working in the kitchen. And so every time we misspelled something, people walked off. There were minor revolts every day. This is a painted piece, exterior piece of the buffet. This is all different character signage for the dance hall. Cognac ads. This piece was done in the style of the French poster artist Jules Charret to advertise the dance group. And I think this is on to somebody else, part of somebody else's presentation. So that's an overview of one of my.
But before we pass the baton on to Robert, I wanted to ask how much research into French design, the French way of looking at things, went into creating these, this theming.
We did a lot when we.
Did you get to go to Paris?
Didn't get to go to, but it was the same as going to Paris every day, except for the fire alarms that were being operated constantly, because we never went outside. We were staying at Valley, so we reported to work every day through the link, and sometimes we'd go outside for 3 or 4 days at a time. And of course, you had the streetscape, and it was kind of like going to work in Paris street. But anyway, we did do real exhaustive research, and even at that, found that we made mistakes and had to go back and change things.
How many people were on your team?
We had a team of 10 that were there for that last month, and then people working in our shop back in Denver also.
Thank you. Next up would be Robert Beckmann, talking about some of his mural work in other casino stuff. Can you hear Robert?
I hope this is not a determinant that's going to follow up. This is probably a third to the end of my presentation. So, but we'll adjust. We'll adjust. I think the essence of comedy really is a non sequitur. So maybe this kind of disjunction or whatever will set me up. We'll go from there. This is so I'm just going to adjust it. This is all on the top of my head. Okay? This is one of my finite pieces that ended up being rented by MTV for the show. They had this reality show where kids would live in the Palms Casino for a while. And they ended up buying it. And of course, the kids were 7 of them, and they were the Magnificent Seven. They would enter into their whatever they did. Passing by this painting every day. And my history, I came here a long time ago, and I've always thought that art should be local. Like good politics is local, good art is local too. And so I was struck moving here by the big gamble and the little gamble. That's what this is about. But anyway, the hotel finally bought it, and I guess it's now in a high roller street. Okay, I'm pushing the wrong button here. That's, oh my gosh. All right, well, jumping around here. This is from the London Club at the Aladdin. It's sort of disjuncted, I guess, here. I mean, soccer ball. Where's Win? I guess we missed Win. Okay, that's that. Not a theme thing, it was just something that felt like fun. Oh, wow. This was slide number 2. This was out of my entry into this whole thing. This is the Hilton International way back when. I was going to say something at the start about I'm surrounded by people who are able to operate an iPhone, and my capabilities are more limited. I'm an old sticks, English, and dirt guy, so I'm a pain. So the Hilton had me do 2 pieces for them. One, hopefully you'll see some of them on here, and this was the other one. This was a 140-foot long graphic of a horse race, and more the idea of decor than anything else. And when I found that the stuff that I made for casinos survives if it's decor or decoration, but if it has any notions about being art, it's axed within 3 or 4 years. Oh my gosh. All right, well, we'll get back to the horse races. This is Vegas World, Bob Stupak's joint. It used to be down where the Stratosphere is now. And it was all outer space themed, and we took off from that. Jeff Bissell, incredible designer, he was going to put everything over the top, so to speak. Big 6-wheel on the left there. I did all the faux finish, nebula behind it, and all the planets that existed within the space. And let's hope we got it right this time, including the moon. I'm sorry, these are all out of order. Okay, this is really a 17-foot in diameter gunite ball that sat up high in the casino here, and painting it was sort of crazy. We did it, my wife and I, on the end of a 40-foot long boom lift, and trying to get up there on this thing, and it's bouncing up and down. You're trying to raise, and then you're trying to rotate it on the sphere. Meanwhile, juggling a NASA moon globe, which you're trying to model things off of, and somehow coordinating it. It was huge fun. We had 2 weeks to do it. That was insane right from the start. But now I'll see if I can find. Okay, so now you see my there it is. Now you see the whole deal. This is painting the thing. Looking over the edge of this became a great Christmas card one year. So, peace on earth, that was the reason. But when we finished the whole thing, we put a little cardboard USA flag where the moon landed. We were all singing moon songs to each other for inspiration. All right, we'll go back to, I guess it doesn't matter where we go. This was my tagline. I was going to say at the end of this thing that I'm more into doing murals for nonprofits anymore, but if something happens and there's a sign out there, I'm ready. It doesn't fly signs. And I was playing with the idea of Batman and Beckmann. All right, this is at Sunset Station, and at the end of painting strange whoop-de-doos everywhere in the place, on the ceilings and wraparounds and whatever. They were so grateful that I put up with them. They said, okay, Robert, it's some figure, I forget what it was, $8,000 or something like that. They said, now paint us whatever you want, but it's got to deal with Sunset Station. Which was sort of fun. This is probably on the art end of things. This was a piece commissioned by the Bellagio, and somewhere in here. Oh my, I don't know where. I guess it got lost. Well, it's all messed up. Okay, well, I did 3 or 4 paintings for them. It's in the spa end of things, and it was just sort of fun. The shot that I wanted to show you was in situ, in the thing of the couch in front of it. The frame that they put around this painting is maybe 3 foot square. It has like a 6-inch platinum frame on the outside. I never heard of a platinum frame. Are you kidding me? But it works. It's gorgeous. If you can find it tucked back behind the Japanese restaurant in the spa area, it's worth seeing just for the frame. This is a sort of aside too. This doesn't belong in any casino. This was just some work that my signature stayed on. That was one of the things that I wanted to talk about, is how quickly, everything disappears within the casino, and they never let you sign them, because then you get into Irish rights violations when they destroy it. Did I say that? Other casino people here, I hope not. But this was done by for the Boy Scouts in their trading books. And this is 12 by 12. And this is Treasure Island, one of 13 paintings in the GI. These were all about 3 by 4 feet, something like that. Gave us 2 weeks to do these things. Typical the insanity. This is my old studio. I had to show you this. This is my being frenetic when I dyed my hair. And now I know properly where they belong. Lucky my hair. I'll leave that to the ladies. Did I say that? This is work that I did for the commission that Scott talked about at the outset, for the feds for the U.S. Botanic Garden. Talk about material. People ask, what do you paint with? And sometimes I'll say acrylics, then I'll say oils. And this was a special silicate paint that was painted on heavy cement panels. You can't see it here, but each one of these 12 foot tall, 7 foot wide, was 3 panels, 4 by 7 foot. Each 4 by 7 foot panel weighed 425 pounds and was fragile. So painting this thing in Las Vegas or in Henderson, and then shipping it to Alexandria, Virginia, and downloading it there to get it on the special trucks to get it into the capital, was a nightmare. I mean, I had a nervous breakdown too.
Is that different than the way you normally would work in a casino?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the schedule was a lot longer, right? 2.5 years to do this. So that was comfortable. But the insanity of dealing with fragileness and getting it onto the campus, as they call it, was awesome. This is some of the art that does survive, I think. This is in the High Roller Street again. This is
Where at?
that's at Rio. And this is sort of my comment on Vegas, one of my comments. Las Vegas borrows from all the other world's cultures, so this was my sort of getting back at it. This was a painting based on a painting done in 1776 by a guy named Wright of Burby, and it was the inauguration of the Pope in Rome. So the painting basically is the only additions were the brooms and Caesar's on the right and the boom sign. And in the middle of the fireworks, which was there in the original painting I put the dooms, and where St. Peter's was in the original, I put the boom sign. This was the beginning. So now we've shuffled back around. Here we are back at the Hilton. And this was the first piece of art that I did for a casino here. And it's 11 feet tall and 18 feet wide. And I signed it. I got away with it.
Is it still there?
This lasted for about, I think, 3 years, and then a big TV panel went up. And I wish they had told me. I would love to have videotaped it. Torn down. There was a mural that I did here when I first came here for an Icon. When I first came here for the city, I was brought in to do the first public art in town. And there was a building that was 40 feet by 24 feet, which is now where the bus station is. When you first get off the freeway, was the downtown fire alarm station. And I painted this big sort of crazy puzzle piece painting, which was sort of shapes which felt like leaves falling from the cottonwoods that surrounded the thing. And it sort of exploded in this leaf pattern. And I found out after they destroyed it that they had come in with a big ball on the end of an iron chain, and smacked it into the wall, Wouldn't that have been a great video? I see that thing just blow apart. They were so ashamed of what they did, I guess.
Robert, on something like this, the final image, who and how much of that was what they wanted, and how much of what you brought to it? In terms of like the perspective, the the kinetic qualities of it.
Good question. They said they wanted a horse race, and I suggested going around the curve because I felt like that was the most dramatic shot. And then I wrote to all of the racetracks in this country, and I told them when I was about that I wanted to do that particular pose, and I got 3 shots from all of them at the Kentucky Derby. Kentucky Derby on the track. Wouldn't you know the Kentucky Derby had the best horse photos? I had to talk about it. An interesting story on this is in terms of how it was done in a studio, so painted all at ground level on ladders. But when it was installed, the casino was 30 feet up. And as I looked at the thing finally from across the room, like 120 feet away from the thing, or however far I was across the huge space in the hill, I saw that guy in the very back, the green shirt, the yellow hat, had way too big a head. So I had no other resort to crawl up this scaffolding, and do a few strokes, 30 feet up. I get down and look at it, go across the road. 3 more strokes until I got it right.
Would they have paid you if they had left the oversized head?
I'm sure didn't see it. I worry about things. When I had a business, I had people working for me. They said, "Robert, leave it, it's done." And I said, "Well, it's almost done." And then I would say things like that.
Well, thank you. As Robert passes the baton to Evgeni, I'll remind you that there'll be a question and answer period at the end. So somebody will be handing out like cards that you can write your questions on, and then they'll transfer them to us, and we'll read them and answer them. So that'll be happening at some point. So.
There it is. Hi. This is some slides in black and white photographs of my work on the Venetian project, which was one of my longest one in town. I probably worked on it over 2 years and about 200 sculptures inside and outside. Obviously, St. Theodore is outside. I'm working on left to the screen on a clay sculpture for the Campanelli Tower. And this is where one of the questions on sculpture in Las Vegas was raised about the use of new materials. Anything that is larger than life size, usually we make out of styrofoam or high density foams. Anything that requires big details, it's clay. And then molded in silicone and maybe created as a fiberglass part. Let's see next one. Now the Venetian project. This is the top of the Campanelli Tower, about 300 feet above the street, I think. Yeah, it's 12 foot tall. Low line. We could go younger there too. Again, what I like about the Venetian project is that really the team that we had in late 1990s was really good quality artists, and I thought that as a team result, made a pretty good statement with the Grand Canal shops and all the really realistic and very good interpretation of Venice. So it's pretty recognizable artwork around it. This is another project that's with a sculpture for a Tao nightclub. This is where a lot of the projects in early 2000s started getting bigger and bigger and larger. Again, made out of styrofoam.
How long did it take you to start to finish on that?
This probably took the entire process to between 2 and 2.5 months. The sculpting itself is less, maybe about 3 weeks. The process was very complicated because it's one of the very few encapsulated styrofoam sculptures in town. There was no mold or hard coat, and we had to slice it in millions of pieces, so it was accepted by the fire regulations. So hopefully this is not going to burn if the nightclub catches on fire. You know, we have materials in between the layers of the sculpture that will be working as a fire barriers, but the styrofoam is still in there, and it's hard coated with a gypsum-like product in order to do it. And this is one of the sculptures that was commissioned by a restaurant from New York City, Faux. So I did get 3 trips to the Big Apple out of it. I was never satisfied with R&D. This is a work for a children's museum, not a casino, but it really, as a part of the slide, was, again, even the children's museum in town started getting into figurative sculpture, and that's one of my other favorite topics. How figurative sculpture is speaking a little bit better to people, because you know, faces, people's bodies are a lot more recognizable and interactive as an artwork. There is me posing, there it is in front of the museum. This is one of the sirens for Treasure Island. I don't know if it's still there, but that was one of the largest projects. She's about 25 feet tall, from knee to the hand, and again, it made a very, very large styrofoam sculpture, about 2-3 months project. Here she is on the ship. PBR Bull, another 25 feet tall sculpture, really looks very small from far away. But again, this one was sculpted in styrofoam. We made a quick molds, and it's actual fiberglass painted to look like metal. Flamingos, the flamingo Hilton. This is a part of the process on a project for a SLS sign. It was a series of peace signs, their logo. This is part of the many steps of the process of making mold. Fiberglass part, a lot of detailing, a lot of painting, a lot of spraying, a lot of modern materials involved in it, and step by step putting everything in a metal armature to sustain the elements. And there it is, a snake for Chinese New Year, city center, which I did a lot of the Chinese New Year work. Again, very large. Here's where painting it.
Where is it?
That was at city center for one of the Chinese New Year events, and of course we had like 6 hours to install it and repaint it. It couldn't fit the doors. I have all the casino doors written, the sizes are written in my shop, so I know how to cut and slice my sculptures in order for them to fit through the doors. Last minute, trying to dry the paint with a hair dryers or whatever we had with us. This is my night crew working on a clock. Another project for Chinese New Year at City Center. That was the first one. Big rabbit for crystals. Diablo, 16 feet tall. Here she is in front of Monte Carlo, and photo shot of the PBR again.
So when you're walking through, say, Caesars or the Venetian, and you see your work, wherever it might be, in the large ones, the small ones, what do you think when you see it?
I usually criticize my work when I see it, and I should have talked with the client a little bit better on suggestions. So this is usually what I see if I do walk through the casinos. That doesn't happen very often to me. It's been years.
What's the relationship between the commercial work that you do for these casino clients and your fine art? Do they feed each other?
It's yes, they do. It's a love and hate relationship. They do love each other and help each other sometimes, and sometimes are in each other's way. but I do, because of my commission and commercial work, I do have access to a good, interesting source of materials and technologies that come to us through Hollywood or whatever. I would use materials that NASA will buy or some movie industry, and it will help me out with my fine art work. On the other hand, the fine art will help me get ahead on a commercial project. Many times designers or clients will come into my space or shop and they will get inspired by a fine art project that I'm working on and ask me to incorporate it into the commercial art. So it is kind of both.
All right, Brian.
I have a PowerPoint, and so I'm going to talk about some of these projects I personally am responsible for, and others are just projects that I've either admired. I kind of want to talk a little bit about the evolution of the gaming sign from something that Mark Oatis we were talking about called Biscuits and Whiskers, where the sign is really a basic kind of cabinet shape. It might be a biscuit shape or it might be a hot dog shape, and then we would add tooth lights coming out of the side of it to kind of decorate it. So this is a perfect example of that, where it's very themed. It's a graphical theme. So those early on in my career, those were actually would be painted graphics, and then they transitioned into printed graphics. But they would be taped and airbrushed and painted. Almost all of the cabinets were treated in the exact same way. They'd be gold polished aluminum with little Bud lights that would twinkle around. And that's really where gaming signs were in the 90s when I was getting started. This is another example of that. And then we started getting more advanced theming, so layers of embellishments, and some of those embellishments might be sculpted embellishments. So they might be made out of fiberglass or a similar type of material. It might be, as time went on, they would be CNC machined and beveled. This is an example that was in, I think it was Green Valley Ranch, and there's another one where it's starting to get more and more sophisticated. So we were going from biscuits and whiskers to, a little bit more advanced sort of themes. And then this was one of my favorite projects, where we kind of re-envisioned all of these classic Las Vegas signs for a cruise ship called, it was a Royal Caribbean ship. I can't remember the name of the boat. But so obviously this was a design kind of incorporating almost like a collage of vintage Vegas signs. This was my favorite, and actually, believe it or not, within that kind of serpentine snake shape that goes vertical, that's actually, there was grid neon inside of that. So it would illuminate these much smaller slots. So it had a very similar animation to the one that I've only ever seen in movies. I've never seen the actual wind sign. This is another example of much more advanced theming around the same era. And Ev, I don't know, did you? Yeah, you sculpted this one? Yeah. So, we do so many of these that it's, honestly. But this was really a good example of that kind of incorporation of those more traditional sign techniques, those lights, and incorporating the three-dimensional sculpture. This, the Venetian, like I was saying, I think was kind of the pinnacle of the sculpted, themed, highly decorative displays. Right around this time, Paris happened, the Venetian happened, Mandalay Bay. So this is like, I think, the high watermark of these type of themed signs. And this particular sign was designed by Helga Watkins, who's a professor at UNLV, and everybody really admires her. And she actually hired me at YESCO, and these were the earliest projects that I worked on. And I was responsible for doing some of the graphic treatments and things like that on these early signs. And then, so now I'm kind of starting to transition into the more modern style of signs where we're starting to incorporate digital. And this was the same kind of thing we saw earlier where we have, scintillating lights, we have neon here, and we're starting to incorporate TVs. And that area to the lower left, that's actually a LED, meter, which would show like jackpot information and stuff like that. And this was the design drawing. And this was kind of a radical departure from, a trapped cabinet, and this was starting to get more and more kind of rectangular and graphical and digital. And then this is another example of almost like what I want to say, like disassembling traditional building elements. So we would get a design from the architect. There might be awnings, there might be all kinds of different interior treatments, brick and I-beams and things like that. And so I thought it would be fun to kind of dissect all of those elements instead of try to recreate an awning or try to recreate an I-beam. What would it be like to kind of take all of these elements and, mix them all together? So this was, again, kind of a radical kind of rethink. This is the original doodle for that. This is a video. I'm not sure if we can break and show the recon video. I can keep going. Okay, great, thank you. So this was done in, I think, 2003, and this is kind of things were going more and more digital. People were starting to incorporate plasma screens at that time because it was the first time we could have a flat screen that was portable enough that could go into a sign and that was large enough to be meaningful there. So these were all like 42-inch plasma screens. And this was an animation I produced to try to communicate that idea to the customer because they didn't understand what it was because they were so used to kind of biscuits and whiskers. This is for Harris. So it's very much a kind of an arcade type environment that they have. And this was kind of the first, version of a sign like this. And eventually these evolved into the signs that are at Red Rock. So I'm ready to go back to the PowerPoint now, and which translated into these signs. So these are a combination of, big, bold, static graphics and sort of designing around like a kit of parts. Thinking about it, where we have, horizontal and vertical lines in these specific shapes, and then how many different ways we can kind of work with these elements to create something, variations of something, but they all look good together, they all fit with the environment that they're in, and they all communicate clearly the message that, we want you to play these games, and if you want to spend 25 cents, you can do it over here. So this was kind of the most exciting time, I think, for me, working in the signs, where I felt like, we're onto something new and we're doing something, and that kind of kept evolving until the Cosmopolitan, and they're entirely digital. There's the only message that is communicated is a digital message, whereas on the Red Rock ones, they were still graphic, kind of printed graphic treatments. And these were just really fun, and they were sort of intricate in a way. drawing that was produced for that. This is a really fun one. I don't think the video works for it, but I'm not sure what this is. You know, Hard Rock has, this is for Hard Rock Tampa. They have a theme in a way. You know, it's kind of definitely a rock and roll type modern theme. And this was early on in LED lighting, and I was really excited about all of the possibilities and more interested in not so much designing a sign, but designing some sort of lighting, treatment or something. Designing something that was cool and attractive, and then could evolve over time. Something that's exciting. Anyway, so then there's also a TV on there, of course, for the people. And then and then this transitioned into being entirely digital. So this whole sign is all about content. There is a sort of a physical shape there where these articulated screens, but really it's all about the content. And then that kind of get into the rest of my presentation. This Taboo nightclub was not something I was involved in, but a project that I really admired, and it was completed in 2004. These, the triangular sort of pyramid lighting up above would kind of, when you came into the club early on, it was just, normal kind of warm white light. And then as the night progressed, those lights would start to animate. It was almost like a disco floor above your head. The other thing that was really innovative about it is the first example I've ever seen of an interactive table. So if you set a drink on the table, those tables where you see the eyes, a little cloud of stuff would go over to your drink on the table. Or if people were dancing on the table, your silhouette would be activated in some way. You could also interact with those pictures, so you could, wipe your hand across and, it would warble, and there's all kinds of really interesting treatments that it would do. And the tables were made out of concrete, so they were very substantial, and there were projectors up above. And for the time, it was really, really amazing. Another great example is the Revolutions Club in the Mirage. This was another project that was really impressive to me, and one that I really admired. They had this projection surface behind the back bar, and it was all mapped so that there were three-dimensional sort of shapes, like molding and things like that along the back bar. And then all of these patterns would interact with those shapes. So let's say these zigzag lines would pass through, and then they would animate in different ways based on, as the different levels that they pass through. And there were birds and fish and things like that also happened that were really amazing. And I have a video of this one as well that shows interactive tables. And what's amazing about this is this was the same year. In fact, this predated the iPhone announcement, and they had multi-touch surfaces that you could, write your name on it, and you could, turn the ashtray, or there was some sort of combination of movements that would send the writing that you wrote on the table and send it up on the center columns on the large projection surfaces. So I mean, this is really, really amazing. This is cutting edge stuff that, for the time, I mean, we take all this for granted now. We expect things to do this because we have, very sophisticated phones in our pockets. But back then, this was. Okay, we can go back to the PowerPoint. Sorry. Oops, going backwards. Another project that everybody's seen, or if you haven't, you have to go check it out, is the Cosmopolitan columns. They're really amazing. And then this one I personally did, and I incorporated a lot of sort of traditional concepts, traditional painting concepts and techniques, and then anamorphic projection and trompe l'oeil and things like that to make a convincing 3D illusion. Yes, yeah, except the SLS. And that's my last slide.
How complex is that? It's very difficult.
It's not. I guess it's hard to say. It's complex in a lot of ways, but it's also super simple. I mean, it is a centuries-old technique that's just applied in a new way. So it's in a way it's like deceptively simple, but also it is not. It's definitely not easy. A lot of thought has to go into what's the vantage. What's the viewer's perspective? What's the vantage point we want it to be seen from? Because at other angles, that duck looks kind of just like a big blob.
Has there been content that you wanted to try out on something like that maybe didn't quite, the client didn't quite see eye to eye with?
Yeah, there's always that balance of what do you really want to do versus what they feel fits on brand or fits with their goals. So it's definitely a balancing act, figuring out what that compromise is, and it's a little bit of a battle. I think everybody on the panel could relate to that a little bit about what compromises have to be made to actually get something done.
How long does it take to create an upside down duck?
I think it's hard to answer because a lot of it is building on previous experiences. So that might take a week, it might take 2 weeks, depending on the complexity of it. And sometimes try something and it doesn't work right away, so you have to just approach it from a different way.
Okay. A reminder that there will be comment or the question cards passed around, so you can write questions for the panelists. In the meantime, I'd like to ask each of you. A lot of these things seem very ephemeral, and a lot of them probably, some of the sculptures, some of the murals no longer exist, and all of it at some point will probably be torn down. How do you feel about sort of the ephemeral nature of the casino work that you guys do? This is for all of you.
I'm more concerned about the ephemeralness of the planet. Global warming is much more a concern of mine. And I see, the things being replaced or destroyed or whatever is just an opportunity for someone else to do. That's how I see it. I want to relate to one question that you had about working with a client and how much do you have to change things or alter things. Sometimes you can get away with stuff and sneak stuff in that they're not even aware of.
You tell.
Well, I remember being hired to do a mural for the high rollers club down in Mississippi, one of those, I think it was Paris down there. And at that point, I had a relationship with front operator that just gave me the theme, the color boards, and sizes, and said go for it. So it's a little surprise one, yeah, because I worked with an image of a grove of aspen trees, which was green on the left-hand side with a blackbird sitting, and then there was a panel to the right of that where there was a sort of a flutter of activity where the bird transformed into something else and you weren't sure what. And then on the right-hand side, there was the same forest, the aspen forest, with the gold trees, and the blackbird became a yellow-headed blackbird became an oriole, which is a golden bird. And think about that in the context of Mississippi.
I would like to go back to the question about the ephemerality of it, because a lot of work goes into, a lot of research and work goes into the creation of the things that you guys do. and yet at some point it's all destined to the junkyard. So how do you feel about that?
Sometimes it never gets installed. we've had pieces that we worked on for a month that ended up going into storage and never got put up. It was just in somebody else's budget. It was no longer consistent with the interior scheme. And so probably a common trait to everybody on the panel is you won't survive long in this environment, or especially in the gaming, in providing to the gaming environment with a very thin skin. I mean, compromise deadlines and changing expectations and limitations really go with working in the industry.
Sure, I agree with both Robert and Mark. With Robert on the sculptures, that if they get imploded, I'm happy they make room for someone else. But also I had sculptures in my early days that I did for Paris, and a few years later I saw him at Lake Tahoe. They just didn't make it in Vegas, and they got recycled to Lake Tahoe. In another 5 or 10 years, I heard from a project manager that he has seen him in Biloxi, Mississippi, which is third place. And I'm very happy for them, what happens. With Mark's stories, I agree. I had a project for the opening of the city center that I worked on, and I don't know if Mark remembers, on 4 Kirins for the entrances for the casino. And when I got the contract, the casino was kind of underwater. They didn't have enough money, so that's why they hired me. And by the time I finished the four Kirins, they're mythological dragons made out of fiberglass on a very, very tight budget. I installed it. I hired YESCO to install them, and they stayed in the casino for less than an hour. They were kicked out of it because the casino had the money and they ordered bronze ones for later. So yeah, that's very, very, very typical and usual. They're somewhere in the storage, about 6 months worth of work on all 4 of them. And that's it.
And I think
It's commercial artwork is not, again, that was another topic. It's strictly business. It's not our passion as an artist. I would get more passionate about my fine artwork, and the commercial artwork is just business. Pays the bills.
And I think from a digital standpoint, that's the point, is that it is going to be changed. It is ephemeral, and it could last, it could be a day or years. I mean, so it's just part of the nature of it.
Where do you guys see the sort of deep gaming of casinos going in this digital era? Do you see casinos in the future sort of needing some of the same services that they now have with the sculptures and the murals? Or will this all be digital and G-Win stuff?
I hope it's both. I mean, I think that all my favorite projects are as an incorporation of everything. I think that's the most successful application always. I think the reason why the Cosmopolitan columns work so well is because it doesn't matter that there are TVs there, it's just a really interesting installation. And I think that they really hide the fact that there's a technology there. So I think it's a balance, and I definitely think, to me, the most interesting projects are the ones that
I did a mural of an ocean at Fort Casino in Atlantic City, and I got a call about a year ago from a guy who worked for the casino saying that he had found it in the trash bin, and it was a 7 by 23 foot painting frame, and that's all it's saying too. I mean, one would think that I could ship that roll to Philadelphia and they would stretch it and frame it there and take it down to Atlantic City. No, the client liked the framer here, so they framed it here and created it and shipped it to Atlantic City. But at any rate, here was this ocean lying, in the dumpster, this big image of an ocean. And he said, "Well, do you think we have a client for it?" I said, "Well, maybe. I've got a gallery in Miami. Maybe they can do something." never happened. Anybody wants an ocean like that? That's right.
Mark, where do you see this the casino theme interior going?
I don't know. I've been thinking about this and looking at the collection here, which many of the items here used to be in YESCO's backyard. And when it comes to sign iconography, when it comes to all these real recognizable and memorable items that are constructed, in most cases the real memorable ones were actually not even using typography. Most of the logos on the signs were hand drawn, and specific to those signs and those brands. I wonder how much of what's being built now is going to be to reside in a boneyard of the future, and what it's going to look like.
There's a great novel by a guy named Kurt Anderson. This is one of my favorite stories. Set in, there's a scene set in Las Vegas, and it's around the turn of the century when Las Vegas was in the middle of its casino vendor, building themed casinos left and right. And in this fictional casino, in this novel, the lobby attraction was a holographic recreation of that casino's eventual implosion. So it was a very, the interior of the hotel was making a comment on the ephemeral nature of casinos themselves. What do you think, which sort of leads me to a sideways question about, how do you think these casino themes work in terms of, the visitor experience? Because when I think of the deep, rich experience you have at Caesars, it's impossible to imagine being at Caesars without all that statuary, from the big show-stopping recreations to the small things that are just the wall reliefs and so on. And yet at the same time, if you're sort of aware of things, I mean, you're looking at images of a vanished empire, which that has kind of a sort of a backspin on the whole casino. Am I just reading into that, or is there, are there casino things, are there elements of casino design that have that effect?
Hey Brian, do you remember the day that we were doing the field survey down at the Wynn? We were down, one day we're down at the Wynn, we're down there to take measurements, diagnose what we wanted to do in this environment. We were into it, but in our way, as we tend to be, I think sometimes, in our contemplative, insular, focused, distracted way. And we were standing there just, deciding what we were going to do next. And remember the two women that walked in? Okay. So anyway, these ladies were in their 60s, but they just came. They were obviously first-time visitors, and they just said, "Oh my God, it's magic!" they said, "Look at this place. Look at the design on the floor. It's the same as what's on the ceiling. And look at the, this is quilted. And look at this. Look at the marble." They were going along like item by item would have been Roger Thomas's dream, basically, to realize that the people were just walking in, taking it in, and the whole thing added up to magic to them. So I guess what I'm saying is, as jaded as I am by working in this environment, and of course, every day having to figure out what the client can spend and whether or not we're going to be able to sign the deal and everything, is, and I think about my own folks who used to love to come here. They would just come to check out the latest thing, and they just love to be blown away and delighted. So I think there's that element too. It's an entertainment destination. People are here to have fun, and
Yeah, sort of. it's sort of interactive on the most basic level in the sense that you have to sort of agree to be charmed by it. And if I'm walking through Caesar's Palace and I'm in a grumpy mood, all the statuary in the world isn't going to have an effect on me. But if I'm sort of open to being seduced by it, then you get ultimately this sort of pleasing disorientation by the disjuncture of all that ancient sculpture in this sort of bizarre modern setting.
I think in a larger sense, the appeal of Las Vegas is chaos theory. When you go out the plane at McCarran, you're sort of whacked by a strange attractor. You lose your diet, you lose your financial ability, you lose your morals, you lose everything for a weekend. And and hopefully you learn something when you go back to Nebraska. And you face your problems back there. I mean, things aren't so difficult. It's easier to orientate. You don't have rooms without mirrors or clocks and a Rococo floor plan to navigate. Where's the bathroom? It's easier. So there's that learning thing that happens here too. It's not simply entertainment. I think there's a positive in that sense.
All right. Well, we have a few audience questions, and there's still time. There's still time to hand them off to some of the folks there. So we'll go through them as fast as we can here. So this is for each artist. What was your largest commission in dollar value? And who was the client? Now you might find yourself having to be circumspect about that, but answer as best as you can.
Me first? I'd have to answer it both from the standpoint of the company that I work for right now, YESCO, which is needs to have quite a lot of fuel shoveled into its belly every week in order to survive. But as far as the dollar amount, given the fact that I guess I don't know if I'm on the clock or not, but the RA pylon was a very big project, and as far as in the years before I came here, I remember the first $1 million job that I did, which was signage at Sunset Station, which was really cool, really fun, really creative. Naturally, we over-delivered even at that, and ended up doing $2 million worth of work for them. But yeah, it was definitely fun putting the deposit check in the bank.
For me, it was the job for Congress, the Botanical Garden in D.C. 2.5 years. Kept me and 3 other people. Easy.
For me, as Icon Sculpting, as a company, probably the largest project that I had was for private residence. It's not into it. Much bigger than the casino ones. And working for other companies, just like Mark, I worked with a lot of $1 million projects as a part of a team. So it all depends in that case.
I think I want to talk about one that was huge. That was a YESCO project, which was found blue, that never happened. That was by far the largest. It was going to be the entire tower, the entire facade was going to be an all digital thing. So that big blue kind of void in the sky was going to be, a really amazing project. No, the YESCO got paid, but it was not. They didn't get paid for the job. Obviously, they didn't lose. They weren't very good in materials. Yeah, it would have been better for them if that happened, for sure.
Well, I see from the news today that they're going to have to wrap some part of the exposed element of fountain blue. So
Yeah.
at least there goes an ISO. All right, another question. Can you describe a particularly imaginative research that you did for a project?
I did the mural for Palace Station railroad train, which was sort of fun. The thing is, sometimes they'll give you a generic thing, and it's always fun to make it very specific. So I made it 1895, and I did research on the costumes for the people and the kind of the signage that would exist there in the lounge. Maybe if I can give you two. The second one was the Colorado Bell Casino down in Laughlin. They had a riverboat theme. And they wanted me to, I think, do Mississippi riverboats. And I discovered that there were riverboats that went up and down the Colorado River from Nelson's Landing down to Yuma. So I researched that and found historic photographs of the boats that went up and down. And then I figured that I would try and find from the water, looking at Nelson's Landing, the landing in Nelson, where the boats came up from Yuma. And we went up and down, a friend and I, in a boat, trying to find the location of the old stamp mill where they processed the gold. And then we realized it was 30 feet underwater because of the dam down the river.
I always had fun researching, like you had mentioned Caesars, so it was always fun to, I can't think of one specifically because we superficially did a lot of research on a lot of different, it might be Art Nouveau or looking at French architecture and things like that. We were working on Paris, or we're looking at Venetian architecture. We're working on the Venetian. So there's not really one that stands out, but that was a real pleasure, kind of starting to learn even just superficially about all these different artistic and creative movements and time periods and that really influence those themes.
All right, next question. With the advances in 3D printing technology, do you see foresee a use for that in sort of this casino environment?
I think we did use 3D printing to do some sharks or something. I'm trying to think, several years ago, when it wasn't 3D printing, it was 3D milling actually. So they were able to use some sort of a 5-axis mill, so they would go out of a solid block of material and route it out, because we had a 3D model of it before we had any other object. Maybe that didn't turn out.
No,
I think it didn't turn out.
I'm just going to jump in as a sculptor, taking this very seriously. 3D printing, it's a great technology. It's 3D milling or 5-axis router. There exists in already, including in Las Vegas. The problem with that is it's still very, very expensive. About 2 or 3 times more expensive than hiring a sculptor. It will have a future at some point, but for now, I still think that there's going to be room for my colleagues to do whatever we do.
Someone asked, what new technologies or techniques are in development or on the horizon?
I would definitely say I think everything's going to be interactive soon. I just think that many more young people, when they see a screen, they expect it to react to them. They expect it to be interactive, and I think it's a letdown if they can reach it and touch it, but it doesn't do something.
I agree with that, and I think that that's the trend for the casinos, interactive casinos. But one of the new fascinating materials that I found out is painted light. Have any of you guys heard of it? That's the new technology. You can paint it just like a regular spray paint, and it gets connected to a power source and lights up. Paint as light.
I've heard of a solar generator, which is painted. We have walls that will generate electricity now. It's painted.
Can you describe a particularly difficult negotiation with a client?
Or can you describe one that wasn't?
Can I share one with, I don't know how many of you call Bob Stupak. I can tell you plenty of Stupak stories. It's just one relative to the moon that you saw there. He had two people come in to try and paint that thing, and he had a deadline of the opening, and he was sort of pressed, and he said, "Okay, Robert, can you do this?" And I said, "Yeah, I can." He said, "You have 2 weeks." And I said, "Yeah, I can." He said, "Well, come back with a figure for me." So I came back, and then I think the figure at that time, this was a long time ago, but I work cheap too. I think it was $8,350 or something like that that I quoted for. And he says, "Well, I have a different figure in mind." I said, "Well, of course." "What's that, Bob?" And I'm thinking he's going to say $8,000. He says, "No, how about $7,777? Or I'll give you the ticket, the keys to my 1939 Rolls Royce, but you can't have the what do they call it? The certificate for 6 months. The title, I opted for the cash."
Difficult negotiations. Hey Brian, this one is for you. To what extent are clients interested in interactive graphic interfaces and signage? And for projects like the iPhone cable, is general customer engagement the point, or do they have a functional dimension as well?
I think ultimately all signage is about communication. So if it doesn't communicate to the customer, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. So I think in the sense of an interactive, I think there is an expectation that it would serve a purpose. It would just be, it's like a freemium game. You get a game for free, but really if you want to get into it, you got to buy upgrades or do whatever. So I think that's probably going to be the same with tables and things like that. You're already seeing the ability to order beverages or order meals with iPads at your table. So I think it's, there's a natural kind of motivation for there's a whole motivation there for it. It's a cool thing. And then there's that other layer where the owner, the proprietor of the business can justify it because they can say, okay, this is part of the business. It makes sense to develop this technology or incorporate this technology into their existing stuff.
Someone asked, can you talk about the architects you work with? But do you guys come in at that stage working with the architect, or do you come in?
Yeah, I think frequently, especially at YESCO working on interior gaming stuff, we work very, very closely with the architects. It would be a lot of the times a collaborative thing because, like I was saying about the eras of, they might have a specific era of Venetian architecture that they're interested in and that they want to develop. And even with Caesars, they have, architects that are, that's their area of study is that all of that history of architecture. So they might say, we're really into this Byzantine columns, and these are the ones that we want to explore. This is the era that we want to look at. So there was a lot of interaction there. And then there was other layers of working with on the cosmopolitan signs where they were very specific about, we don't want you to incorporate any of the elements that we've developed. Those are all sacred. The crystals and the things like that we put in the chandeliers, those are special for the chandeliers. You can't take those and put them on the signs. So you have to create something wholly their own and not borrow any of these elements, but that fit and work in there. So that was an interesting challenge because almost always it would be like, we have this scroll or we have this treatment or we have this pattern, use it to make your sign. But the Cosmopolitan was the exact opposite of that. It was everything else is sacred, and same with the signs. Those are special unto themselves. They weren't going to take any design elements from those and bring them out.
Anybody else want to add anything?
Yeah, we work with a lot of them, and the best relationships with architects are really learning because I worked on a job about a year ago where the architect was in favor of what we were doing, and originally it seemed like there was reservation on almost every design that we presented. And finally, the guy just picked up some tracing paper and went over it and was really explaining to me how to improve the proportions that we use. He said, if you're going to use stone, don't have it float up in the air. It has to recede to the ground in order for it to have stability. You know, if you're going to use this particular material, use it in this particular way. It was very illuminating. We like to think that we understand that, but when you're working with another professional, especially really a skilled one, a lot of times the best thing to do is get out of the way and try to complement their efforts rather than to show off what you can do.
I find myself working over and over with certain designers, interior designers, with the architects, and it's always a matter of dancing with them and being flexible and trying to adjust. Sometimes you can inflect things the other way, like I mentioned a couple of things earlier about working with the project down in Laughlin. You can. It's fun. You can expand them and their ideas, and you change yourself.
Someone asked, what is your favorite part about being an artist in Las Vegas? And I can see this both from the fine art direction, but also as a commercial artist, because the kind of work you're able to do here might not be the kind of work you can do in some other location. So if you guys wouldn't mind addressing that.
Well, I can. Especially when it comes to working on gaming projects in particular, because they do tend to have really good budgets. In fact, one time I was working with a client, with a non-gaming client, and before I came to work for YESCO, but when most of my clients were gaming clients, and I was making my presentation, and he said, before you tell me what this is going to cost, I want to remind you, I don't have that funny money that you're used to working with. You know, you're not going to get the kind of a budget. So it is true. And also, one thing about being in a hospitality and entertainment environment, we get a lot of the "I want something that nobody else has" syndrome. You have to keep it a secret. We fill out a lot of non-disclosure agreements because when our stuff hits the street, that's supposed to be the first time anybody's seen it. So that's probably a bit different than working in other areas.
Well, I guess I'm totally schizophrenic. After living here all these years. I came here to organize the first public art in the town a long time ago, and then ended up working with the school district doing sign painting, and from then doing larger graphics, and then finally got involved with the casino industry, and I worked with them for a long time until I found that I was more interested in the nonprofit world, and began to do more things with museums and other institutions. I found it always a juggling act. Peter pays Paul, the casinos, and it would pay me or my people who are working artists, trying to do their own thing. It's very difficult to make a living in this town as an artist selling art. Let's just put it that way. It's almost impossible. So if you're going to survive as an artist in this town, you better damn well have a teaching gig or a job doing commercial art within whatever, the casinos. So it's always left me this way. When I had my own business and had 7 people working for me at one point, trying to get enough work selling and then coming back and designing what I sold, and then having to coordinate their efforts to get something done, and then to turn around and become the bookkeeper to pay everybody. It was just a constant juggling act. And as I get older, it's not easier.
Anyone else being an artist?
I think Mark had the image of the frontier on the left. I think that there is sort of a, like there's no rule book, there's no institution kind of forcing you to do anything. And I think that that's a really good thing because you can basically do whatever you want. You don't have to follow some rules, or you don't have to work within some institution to get anywhere. Maybe, what Robert's saying is there's because of that, there's no infrastructure there, and there's not the collectors that there should be, like there would be, or whatever. But I think that if there is a good side, it's that you can, as an artist, you can explore what is really rewarding for you, and you don't necessarily have to be guided by the marketplace. I look at a lot of the LA artists and a lot of really successful artists, and I gotta think that they're so damn bored of painting the same thing over and over again.
Right.
But that's what the market wants, so that's what their job is now. That's what they do.
I've always found myself just being interested in everything, and people would say, "Where's your style, Robert? What do you do?" And because I would paint imagery that spoke to nuclear testing, or I do imagery that would speak to the housing crisis, or I do abstracts, or I do things that was just involved with natural history. And for me, art has always been a filter for my interests. It's been that. It's been something about my loves, and the casinos are a whole different thing. I see the casino world in Las Vegas moving faster and faster and faster, and I guess I find myself wanting to move slower and slower. And the activity of painting, somehow I want to spend more and more time just for those brush strokes over and over again. It's become very meditative. So there's that.
We have time for one last question here, and it seems like maybe a good one to end on. Somebody wants to know with the prevalence of digital and interactive and the sort of loss, as Mark pointed out, of some of the hand-drawn way of doing things, do you face a danger of sort of casino homogeny in the future?
No, I think that the casinos they try to be everything to everybody, right? So you already see, you could argue homogeny already by saying, well, they all have world-class pools, they all have world-class restaurants, they all have a spa, they all have, best shopping in the world, and they all have the same amenities. So what draws you next door? Like, why would you go to the Venetian if you're at the Wynn, or vice versa? So, you could argue that homogeny is already there, but it's just, they're all going to try to distinguish themselves, and it's a town of one-upsmanship. Aria Sign's a perfect example. Does it have to be that tall? Does it have to be? No, but they needed to make a big impact. Aria wanted to make a statement that they were Aria, not necessarily city center. They're a casino, and they're there to do business. So I don't think there's any risk ever of homogenous Las Vegas.
And we are out of time.
It is officially full, yes indeed. Once again, thank you, our fabulous panelists, for being here. Our longtime friends Mark and Brian, and our new friends Robert and Evgeni and Scott. We truly appreciate it. Thank you, audience, for being so hearty and hanging in there with us. I also want to thank John Humphreys from I get it wrong every time, Earth, Water, Sky, for his fabulous AV work for us. And we have comment cards in the lobby. If you'd like to hear on different topics, please fill one out. We want to do panel presentations on what you want to hear. We're also going to be sending you a survey through email, and we would love to have your comments on what you thought of tonight, what we can improve on. So please take 5 minutes and fill it out. It won't take very long. And don't forget, you can buy a membership on your way out. And finally, our next event is Saturday, December 12th, December to remember. Mark your calendar. Thank you for attending. Good night.